All right, what's up, guys? Now we're going to talk about who's better. Who's a better boxer for this era? Who can we label as the best boxer of this era between these two? Two active fighters pretty much in their prime. Who can we say is better? Terence T-Boy Crawford or Vasyl High-Tech Lomachenko? Lomachenko is my favorite fighter of this era. Like, who goes to the Olympics, wins a gold medal, stays 4 more years in the amateurs, and wins another gold medal. Just to be a 4 division weight class champion, in under 16 fights. I think he's about 14-1 right now. Overruling that loss to Orlando Salido, who, fought him unfairly. And, the experts ruled that as a win. That's a win at heart. That's a win. I count that as a win. Like, in my opinion, Lomachenko is undefeated just as well as Terence Crawford, who's 36-0. 36-0 is a very impressive record. Being that the most popular opponent that he's fought was Yuriorkis Gamboa. Now, of course, Terence Crawford has some talent, for a guy boxing of this era. He reminds me a little of Bernard Hopkins a little bit. He's kind of rough, decent technically, has a good chin, has a lot of heart, uses his footwork, has good power, throws combinations, uses his jab. As far as Vasyl Lomachenko, just a well-rounded boxer overall. Where can you get started with Vasyl Lomachenko? Like, what is there to say about him? He does it all good. Great footwork, good foot movement, excellent right jab, very fluent. I don't know if it's any boxer of this time era that's more fluent, being that he was 396-1 in the amateurs. He's very, very fluent. He boxes very, very fluently, just like a fish swims. Just like a monkey swings on a vine. He boxes very, very fluently. It comes so natural to him. He's never tight. He's always on his toes. He can fight on the inside. He can fight in the pocket. He can fight on the outside. Terence Crawford, he's okay defensively, but Terence Crawford gets hit. I mean, Vasyl Lomachenko has gotten hit, but I'm going to kind of let that slide because it was like he was playing with his opponents. Terence Crawford sometimes getting a war with some of these guys. Like, in the boxers that he fight, they don't often have the most punching power. Vasyl Lomachenko, he got dropped by Jorge Linares, being too loose with him. I think that's his only flaw, is being overconfident and being too loose with his opponents. He kind of was boxing Jorge Linares like he was just sparring, and Jorge Linares dropped him. Vasyl Lomachenko got up and he boxed at a very fast pace, and he knocked Jorge Linares out. Lomachenko, he makes mistakes, but they're not so much with his boxing capabilities. It's him as a boxer, and it's kind of him as a man, as far as you shouldn't just taunt and tease everyone. You shouldn't be sparring everyone in a world championship fight. His flaw is that he's too arrogant in a way, but I kind of respect it because he's so skillful and confident in his skills that he's just relaxed. He's so relaxed while he's fighting his opponents like he's in a jacuzzi. Terence Crawford, he usually trains hard and he tries his best every fight and he pulls out the win. But honestly, these two, they might be seeing each other, fighting each other anytime within 3 or 4 years. I would love to see that fight. I would love to see it. Terence Crawford, he's gonna have to fight some bigger names. Terence Crawford is definitely gonna have to fight some bigger names before he even thinks about stepping in there with Lomachenko. I honestly believe that Vasyl Lomachenko can beat Keith Thurman. The question is, can Terence Crawford beat Keith Thurman? You know, it's a lot of guys out there for Terence Crawford to face. I would like to see Terence Cross and Errol Spence Jr. Vasyl Lomachenko and Errol Spence Jr. I think one thing about this time era is the top two, the top three guys, the top four guys, the top five guys aren't always fighting each other. This isn't like the days between Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, and Roberto Duran. These guys are just as talented as those guys, but they're not really fighting each other. I think that's the biggest problem. That is the biggest problem. Like, honestly, these guys aren't necessarily ducking each other, but you guys are being smart, a little bit too smart for boxers and businessmen. Yeah, it's good to get your money, but how about you get more money in a pay-per-view fight and be it great, And Andre Ward, who's one of the most toughest fighters in the ring, kind of one of the most toughest fighters outside of the ring, was getting ducked his whole career, Golovkin pretty much ducked Andre Ward. People were ducking Andre Ward at 160. People are ducking Terence Crawford too. One thing about boxing as a boxer, which you keep under the table with your manager and your team, is that you want to fight boxers that's going to, bring in fans, bring in good money, that you are confident that you're going to win against if you train good. Now, that's way different from the Ali days, the Ray Leonard days, the Holyfield days. If he's the best and you're the best, you guys need to get in there. They really don't do enough stripping of the title these days. A lot of these guys are trying to box just like Floyd Mayweather, fighting once a year. At the most twice a year. Every blue moon 3 times a year. Honestly, in my opinion, as a boxer, it shouldn't take 10 years for you to have 30 fights. One thing I respect about Terence Crawford, I believe he went pro in like 2008. He has about 36 fights, so he's been one of the more active fighters of this time era. Back in the day, they'll fight 6 and 7 times in 1 year. If you don't have a scratch on you or you felt that you fought a bum, then go ahead and fight another one then. But Terence Crawford, he works on his craft. He could definitely fight more big names. He does. I don't remember the last time he fought a big name. Now you can't classify yourself as one of the best or the greatest or whatever if you haven't fought a big name. I believe he can beat a big name, but right now he's reminding me of like Roy Jones Jr. early in his career. Vasyl Lomachenko, of course, he fought Jorge Linares. He fought Gary Russell Jr. Orlando Salido. Vasyl Lomachenko, Nicholas Walters, who he made quit. Vasyl Lomachenko has beat some names. That's one thing you can say about the guy. He has beat some big names out there. Like, these guys were all being talked about like they were, just upcoming legends. Like Terence Crawford, he beat Yuriorkis Gamboa, like I said earlier, but that's about it. Like, who else can you give it to? Terence Crawford hasn't really fought anyone of superior significance like Vasyl Lomachenko has. So honestly, I got like who's a better boxer at this time era, who's greater, who's better. I'm gonna give it to Vasyl Lomachenko. Vasyl Lomachenko is definitely a better boxer than Terence Crawford. Now, can Terence Crawford beat him? I don't know. This is boxing. It takes one punch. But I think Vasyl Lomachenko is a better boxer. You guys comment below and tell me what you think.